Hello, Houston. How are you? It's Mr. McKinney here with Mr. McKinney's Historic Houston. Excited for the live show we do every single Wednesday here at the Heritage Society. We're getting close to the end of our season, by the way. Next show we're going to do next Wednesday is going to be our last season finale, okay? So make sure you tune into that one as well. Well, I'm excited because tonight we're going to talk about African-American history with a buddy of mine, Priscilla T Graham, who's been lecturing and studying African-American history in this region all over Texas. So we're going to talk about that shortly. But of course, we always make sure that we talk about the Heritage Society's important upcoming events. And we have with us Allison Bell, the Executive Director. Say hello, Allison. Come on down.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
There she is. Hello.
We're good.
And the photo of the week is, there you go, you and Chris, of course, there you go.
I wish I had one of those right now.
Oh, how about that? Now, where are y'all at? Tell viewers where you're at.
We are in Austin at a historic building, the Woodall Rogers? Wooten, I forgot his name, but it's a beautiful, look at the beautiful architecture, and it is now a hotel. It was their residence, so I'll think of the name of it.
No worries, it's one of our test questions. How about that? Well, speaking of things that are happening here, let's talk about this. This was just announced, so you're going to get one of the first sneak peeks about what's happening. Talk about this Candlelight Holiday Market.
Yes, we're very excited to be bringing back, and actually we used to have candlelight tours, but we aren't having those anymore. But we are excited to bring back a holiday market. Outdoors, of course, in Connolly Plaza. We're hoping to have about 30 vendors. You can roam free outside, socially distance, wear a mask. We have lots of vendors, some local and some from out of other states.
And many with some really special items, including what we have, holiday decor, jewelry, unique home gifts, apparel. We're going to have a festive atmosphere as well because we're going to have live music there. Period reenactments too, which is what we talk about. How about that?
Yes, we will have period reenactors on the couple of our porches, describing our historic homes and what you can expect, and you can come back for a tour after the market is over. But we're real excited to have that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So support the Heritage Society. Now, what are the dates and how can they get tickets?
Okay, it is on Friday, the first night Friday. We're going to have a preview party, like a VIP, where you can. It's only $20. You can get tickets on our website, of course. If you'll follow the link, you'll go under events, and then you'll see something called Candlelight Holiday Market. Then it's on Saturday and Sunday. Is it the 11th and the 12th? Yes, the 11th and the 12th, 4 to 8 p.m. is the Friday, and then the 12th, 10 to 8, and on Sunday, 10 to 5. And there's special price, like if you wanted to come 2 days, it would only be $15. If you just want to come 1 day, it's $10. And then we're going to have really exciting booths for you to see.
Yeah, there'll be food there as well, and of course Santa Claus will be there, right?
Of course.
Look at that. So holiday market, Candlelight Holiday Market, a throwback to our awesome candlelight tours that many of y'all remember joining us on. That we hope to bring back one day, but for now we've got this holiday market in its place, courtesy of one of our board members that worked really hard making it happen.
Kirksey Gregg is our wonderful board member, and he's worked closely with the Nutcracker Market, with Round Top Market, so he knows these vendors. And sadly, so many shows have been canceled because they're inside. So we thought this was a unique opportunity to offer these vendors a way to be safe outside.
Yeah, I love it. So make sure you come on to this event happening once again on December 11th, 12th, and 13th.
Yes.
Save the date now. Okay, what else is going on at the Heritage Society?
Oh, we still have our suffrage exhibit, 100 Years of the Women's Right to Vote. But actually, we had a student in here today who was doing a report, and he needed to know. He was actually looking at the Mexican-American mural, but I lured him over into our exhibit, and he was fascinated with this. He didn't know much about it. He and his classmate, and they stayed in our museum for almost 45 minutes just learning about this particular exhibit. So we still have this, of course, open on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. We might open again on the weekends depending on traffic. And then, of course, if you are not comfortable coming in, we've got a virtual tour that will walk you through for a whopping $5. You can actually sit in the comfort of your own home and pull the panels up close to you.
There you go. A great tour by Lisa Carey, who helped put this together. She's on the committee.
Yes.
And then, of course, the entire exhibit is co-curated by Betty Trapp Chapman and Ann Sloan.
And Ray Bryant.
And Ray Bryant,
you're
right.
Genealogical.
She worked really hard on that, too. So all these ladies worked hard to make sure that all the stories of Houston's history is told, including the ones that are important right now. It's time for we're celebrating 100 years of women's right to vote. So it's time to celebrate. Also, time to celebrate is our prizes. Here we go from last week's show. So for those of y'all who tuned into last week's show and you stayed for Steve Curry to the very end, Stephen F. Curry was on the show talking about mid-century architecture here in Houston. There he is. There he is again, president of Houston Mod, and he had some questions for y'all. Question number 1.
All right. Name the architect who designed both the Miller Outdoor Theater and the Mecum Fountain.
Okay, so name the architect, that was the question, name the architect who designed both the Miller Outdoor Theater, the 1968 Miller, not the original 1923 William Ward Watkin designed one, and also the 1965 Mecum Fountain. So, what's the answer?
Eugene Werlein.
That's right, Eugene Werlein, and then who is the winner?
We have a new person I don't recognize. The name is Marty Merritt. So
you will recognize Marty Merritt. We're going to have him on the show.
Marty Merritt?
Well, yeah, so he's also an historian. He focuses on mid-century architecture, but also really fascinated with the Dow legacy, too, Alden Dow. So we're going to have Marty on the show. I'm going to reach out to him.
Okay.
But yeah, he got that right. How about that? Look at that. Okay, now our next question.
Okay, how many times has the original MFA, the Museum of Fine Arts building, been expanded on the original block?
Okay, so we're talking about the original 1924 William Ward Watkin designed building that had a few, additions and expansions as early as 1926, 2 years after it was built. Oh, sorry. So what's the answer?
So there was a little confusion from our intern because one person said it was 2 and one person said it was 3, and she wasn't sure.
It's definitely 3.
Oh.
In fact, I actually think it's 4 because they added those wings on at separate times and they expanded one of them in a different direction, a little bit odd, a little further out. And then, of course, the 1958 Niels van der Run, the 1970s section.
She went to the website and saw 2, but it was more than 2. It was 3.
So we're going to give it to 3, by the way. So
okay.
Who said 3?
That person is Kirk John Barillo.
A new person.
A new person.
There you go. So Kirk, you won because you got it closest to either 3 or 4. Potato, depending what you ask. So guess 3 is right. It's closest to that.
And please reach out to us because sometimes we message you and we don't find you. So reach out to us, call our office, or come shoot me an email.
Give me your email address.
So I can send you it is abell, ABELL @heritagesociety.org.
Easy. There you go. Okay, so reach out to us if you want your prizes, okay? Okay, next question.
Okay. What is the name of the truck that made its way across the city representing the Astrodome Proposition? I saw a picture of that truck.
Yes, it was in the slideshow. We talked about it. Okay, what's the answer?
The answer is the Dome-mobile.
The Dome-mobile.
And nobody got it right.
Wow. Okay, so nobody got it right? Yeah. Okay, so 0 winners on that one. Okay, well, the next question then.
All right. Which Houston-based architect firm is best known for being huge fans of Frank Lloyd Wright? Hint, one really loved tennis. Do you have that hint? Yeah.
Yes, there it is.
One really loved tennis. Okay. And the winner, the answer is Mackey and Camrath?
Yeah, McKee and Camrath.
McKee.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Fred McKee and Carl Camrath. So these are the 2 architects that were proteges or worked in the style of Frank Lloyd Wright, and they're sprinkled all throughout, including St. John's Church. That one is one of their little pieces. And of course, we mentioned tennis. That is because Carl Camrath was really active with the Houston Racquet Club and the River Oaks Tennis Club. Yeah, so he designed that. They designed that building as well.
Oh.
They were at Houston Racquet Club on Voss and Memorial. So lots of fun little gems sprinkled throughout. Who got it right?
Marty Merritt again.
There you go. Marty got it right. Good job, Marty.
He knows
okay.
the subject matter.
Absolutely, it's his passion. Okay.
All right. Name the 2. What are the 2 early graduates' names from U of H College of Architecture who were competitors and collaborators? And then there's a hint. They both collaborated with Steve Curry on one of his projects.
Yes. Oh, well, his renovation project. Okay, what's the answer?
Lucian Hood and Lars Bang.
Lucian T. Hood and Lars Bangs, you're right. Okay, who got it right?
Marty Merritt.
Marty Merritt again. 3 prizes for Marty.
3
Good
prizes,
job.
Marty. Reach out to us so we know where to send them. Or better yet, come pick them up.
That's right. Come visit us.
Curbside.
Curbside. Okay, all right. Anything else? Well, thank you again to Allison Bell for joining us.
Yes,
absolutely. Thank you again for joining us. We'll catch you next time.
Tonight. Okay.
Yay. So here we are once again in our studio. We're really excited to be able to be in this space. And of course, we're going to come back next season with some great guests. And we're going to start probably having folks come join us limited capacity. So those folks who are tuning in right now, the folks that really love the show, well, guess what? You'll be one of the first ones who are going to reach out to come join us in the audience. Okay, so there it is. And this is all courtesy of our buddy, Kurt C. Gregg of Kurt C. Gregg Productions, LLC. He helped to make this possible. So we want to thank him for that. Okay, let's take it over to our studio. Once again, here you can check out the space we're in right now. And you're in for a treat because we've got with us a very special lady who has been documenting Houston's African-American history throughout the years. We're going to introduce her shortly and have her come on the show. But real quick, I want to make sure I mention a couple things that we've got on the docket today. Let's see. Let me just switch these out. Here we go. Okay. Okay, thank you again, by the way, to Stephen F. Curry for joining us last week on the show. He took us on a journey through modern architecture here in Houston, and we're really grateful for that because people really enjoyed his particular lecture. They were talking about it. So there he is once again, Stephen F. Curry, architect, preservationist, and of course, president for Houston Mod. Now, and if you, I mentioned earlier, by the way, November 18th is our last show of this season. Okay, so make sure you tune into the last show. We've got some really fun updates for you on that. And we have with us a very special guest, Douglas Weisskopf. And he wrote the book, Rails Around Houston, about Houston trains, and talk about early Houston train history, as early as 1853, talk about the history of that. There's his book. There he is, by the way. You probably recognize, when you zoom in, you probably recognize Douglas Weisskopf because he's a very familiar face over at the Friends of the Texas Room in the early days, and he's retired now and now works over at Papa Ben's Trains, working with model trains. So there he is. Douglas Weisskopf's going to be on the show next week, November 18th, our very last show. And we picked that date for a reason and that show, so you're going to learn all about why that date matters. Okay, we mentioned Houston Mod earlier. I do want to encourage you to go to YouTube. There's a YouTube page, Mister McKinney's Historic Houston YouTube page, because we have a really cool Houston Mod partnership that we did with them talking about historic homes. And we took you to this house at 4603 Ivanhoe. This is the house that we took you in to. You got a sneak peek inside the house, and that video is available on YouTube. And once again, it's a partnership with Houston Mod, which we appreciate them doing that. Steve Curry's actually in that video, along with Dean Forbes with the classic car. And if you missed last week's show with Stephen F. Curry, here he is. Guess what? And if you missed the Robert Sakowicz show that we have, well, never fear, because all these shows are available on YouTube. They're on the Heritage Society's YouTube page. Easy to go to. Go ahead and go there and subscribe and like the YouTube show, because you can see past shows that we have, including shows about the houses that we have here at the Heritage Society, live videos that we've done, photos on architecture, videos on architecture, history tours, and African American history is also available on our YouTube page. Heritage Society is there it is. Make sure you subscribe. All right, what else do we have? Oh, and speaking of Robert Sakowicz, I've got a weekly radio show on 90.1 KPFT, and I want you to tune in because tomorrow Robert Sakowicz is going to be on the show talking about Houston history, and of course with my buddy and my co-host Catherine D. Anspon. She's back on the show for us, joining us with Robert Sakowicz. We recorded it right here at the Heritage Society, so you need to tune in 3 o'clock on 90.1 KPFT, or you can listen to it anywhere at kpft.org, okay? So tune in for that tomorrow, Thursday. And also, we always ask you to like and follow our social media sites, Mr. McKinney's Historic Houston and the Houston History Bus on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Please do that because you're going to learn about Houston history, like I mentioned earlier, with the awesome radio guests that we have and future opportunities that we do on the show. You'll learn about them with our social media sites. And we always offer free tours on board the bus, probably in the springtime. As things get a little better with the COVID situation, we'll be offering free tours once again. And you have to, like I said, like and follow our social media sites. You can always call or text us if you have any questions or want to do something. Right now, the River Oaks Christmas light tours are very popular. I want to mention those because they are popular. And you find out more information at Mr. McKinney's Historic Houston and the Houston History Bus on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So be sure to tune in for that. Okay, now on to the show, right? The part you're all been waiting for. We want to make sure we welcome Priscilla T Graham. Come on out. Everybody's waiting to talk to you. Again, author, photographer, veteran,
Houston.
and African-American historian. How are you? Good to see you. Need that too. Absolutely. Have a seat. Have a seat. All right. Well, And this is fun because we got to hang out with Priscilla earlier, about a month ago or so. She came by the Heritage Society, took some great photos, and really learned about, look at what she has, by the way. We're going to dive into this in detail, in depth, for our lecture today. But she has just documented almost all of African American history in our Houston area, and many of it's gone, by the way. So as you pan around, you can see some of these really, really great books about the history of our city, and I want you to make sure that you give us a like real quick, okay? Really easy to do. Let me see who's all tuning in right now. Okay, Martin Alexander, Prohl, Trotter, Andrew, let's see who else is tuning in. Jim Powers just tuned in. Good job, guys. So thank y'all for doing that. But like I said, give us a like real quick. Give us a like or a heart. That matters to us. We're going to be also answering your questions a little bit later on. Amanda Cooper is chiming in. Who else is chiming in? Mary, look at this. Alan Jones. Lots of folks. For you, this is great. You see? Okay, well, let's get started. I've got a little gift for you. This right over here is something that just came out a little while ago. I'll let you zoom in on this. My friend owns a juice bar called Nourish, and they're right there over in the Heights. They've also got a location on West Gray, and this is called the Mister McKinney. It's a drink that's been out for a couple of months now, but it's mint, kale, spinach. It's healthy. I'm going to give you the first one. There you go. That's for you. And I'm going to have one too, so I can stay energized. If people want to know how I get my energy, it's right here. So let me try this out real quick. I want you to try it out too. Let me know what you think, okay?
We're going to try it out together.
Let's do it together. We'll do it together.
Okay.
Here we go. Let's see how bad it is.
How great it is.
How great it is. Here we go.
Yum. This is great.
It's good.
It's got good flavor.
And it's healthy.
Yes.
Apples, kale, spinach, all the good stuff. Okay. You can get both their locations too. There you go. All right. Well, so Priscilla, tell us about your journey. How did it come about documenting all of these settlements and town sites of African American history in our area?
Oh, my journey. Well, actually, I started with Freedmans Town Preservation Coalition when we were fighting to save the historic brick streets in Freedmans Town. And all I wanted to do was to be able to take pictures and document the history. That's it. Nothing else except for take pictures and do videos. And so with doing that, when we went to court, we were in a down spiral. So there was nothing to do, and I had all these things that just takes everything away. And nothing captures anything like a photo. The one thing that we know that can live forever is a photo. It's eternal. So many of the settlements are disappearing, in the way that I figured that I could contribute to help preserve them is through capturing it and documenting it for other people to see and to share. So that's how my journey actually started.
I love that. And here we are. How many books later?
I'm 27. I'm 27 in right now.
27 so far, okay? Now, your newest book, of course, is this one over here, all about Camp Logan.
Yes.
I want you to zoom in on this one. We're going to talk about this towards the end of it because it is your newest book.
Yes.
But these are all out. Lots of great detailed photos and maps of the history of the Camp Logan 1917 mutiny. It's all right over here in detail in your book, so we'll go over that. But I know you brought some really great photos for us to be able to kind of browse through. So we're going to do this right now. We're going to take us on a journey through early African American history here in Houston. So here we go. Of course, you got to start with Freedmans Town, where you kind of started yourself, right?
Yes,
And passing
yes.
the journey.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about this. Here we go.
Well, that's Reverend Jack Yates. Everybody knows that picture.
There he is.
He's the historic icon here in Houston. He's buried in College Park Cemetery. You can go there, and there's actually a historical marker about him that's there. And there's a lot of work and transition that's actually going on within the cemetery also. But he's the man that was in Freedmans Town that encouraged other people to actually purchase land. And he was the first full-time pastor for Antioch Missionary Baptist Church. And he started Bethel Church that's down in historic Freedmans Town, located at 800 Andrew Street. So he's the iconic piece of Freedmans Town. Many, many years.
Let me see. Okay, so, excuse me, gentlemen. So keep talking about a little bit more about Freedmans Town. Explain to folks, because the photos are kind of frozen for a second. We're going to figure out why, but while we do that, talk a little bit about some of the photos that we have in your book. That might be a good little backup here. Let's get your Freedmans Town book over there. Let's check it out. For some reason, they're not loading on the PowerPoint behind us. But
this is Freedmans Town. This is a view that's overlooking the city off of Buffalo Bayou. So historic Freedmans Town started after actually, it was 22, I think it was 22 families that actually, he's no longer with us. His name is Al Edwards. And they actually have a statue of Al Edwards down in Galveston.
Yeah, Representative Al Edwards. He made it a big
and so
deal.
he used to present here every year for over 25 years. Ashton Miller. So we're gonna go here. This is just overlooking downtown on Main Street. So most of the work back during a certain time, a period of time, was done by African Americans. And there's a
Now these are actual photos that you took of the historic brick streets in Freedmans Town. Talk a little bit about the bricks themselves, the significance, maybe even the patterns. Why were these bricks so important to African Americans?
Okay, they actually petitioned the city for over 6 years in order to have the roads paved, and paving meaning with bricks. And simply because there was, whenever it rained, everything flooded, malaria, disease, and things like that. So they just wanted the convenience of life like everyone else had, and they needed their streets paved. And so they actually petitioned the city. The city charged them X number of dollars. Some people would say the average was $125, but actually depending on where you lived. If you lived on a corner, or if you lived in certain places, or was a business, you paid more. So that was over $250 for some families that they actually paid for the brick streets to be paved. And so when they got the word they could pave the streets, they had to hire a white contractor. And guess what? The white contractor hired freedmen or their descendants in order to put the bricks down, and they actually had to pay for them. So within the design of the bricks, there's actually a design that's within the bricks. And what the code is, we don't know what the code is. We know that certain things in the bricks point to safe places, different places like that, churches, businesses, that's coded in the streets. And I'm from Thomasville, Georgia. The one thing I know is that I didn't know is that when I went home to Thomasville, Georgia, the same exact design that's in the crossroads of these streets are in Thomasville, Georgia. So you know they migrated across, and they brought those traditions with them.
And for context, people might not be aware that Freedmans Town is located just outside of downtown Houston. Technically, it used to be part of downtown Houston before the freeway came in, but you can see this in the shadows of the city. And now it's kind of transitioning, right? I mean, you have close proximity to downtown, and it's been doing this for the last, since the 90s, really. So you have, late 90s, even before that, so you basically have a scenario where people are losing their houses. Talk about what used to be here.
There used to be a church there. This is historic Mount Carmel's property right there. So the bricks, if you see the designs right here within the prayer garden, those are the original bricks from the church. What happened is that the city came early in the morning and tore the church down because they said it was a hazard. And some people would say that they saw people sitting around in the area waiting for people to leave so that they could just start knocking it down. But they knocked it down, and then they put a lien on the property. They charged them $30,000 for knocking their property down, and they had to clean it up. So that's what happened with that property.
And that's horrible, but I do like what Reginald C. Adams did with this particular space. He's very well known for those labyrinths and community projects, so you can look and kind of see that. Another photo that you took, a beautiful photo that you're looking obviously east towards downtown Houston, and you're seeing the bricks, but you're also seeing the trolley tracks, and the narrow streets because, not many folks had cars back then in this particular neighborhood, right? So you've got really, really tiny, narrow streets, but the streetcar makes it. And what street are we looking at? It's
Andrews.
Big time
Andrews
street.
is the last one that has the brick streets. They have the bricks on it. And this is really close to the crossroads. And one thing, when I was talking about how they were being taxed to pay, see the corners? Your richest people stayed on the corners. And your churches and your businesses was on the corner. This is a church. This is St. James, the oldest church that's in Freedmans Town. And on the other corner is the Pullum House, which he was the brick maker. He made over 25,000 bricks a day. We cannot find out. I don't know where those bricks actually are now, or where they were, but they're probably unmarked. Maybe some of them might be in the streets. I don't know. I don't know if we've been able to prove that. But those bricks are 8.5 pounds each, one individual brick. The only way they're compromised is that man compromised those bricks. They won't come up unless someone compromises them. And then when they're compromised, they become loose. But it's absolutely fascinating. And this is Macedonia. This is the second oldest church in historic Freedmans Town. And so it's still there now.
Let's transition a little further north to Akers Homes. And you've got a whole separate book all about this.
Yes.
Which is wonderful. A home, of course, to Mayor Turner.
Yes.
He's famously from the Akers Homes. But talk a little about the area, because it wasn't the same as Freedmans Town. A little more rural. Give us a little journey through Akers Homes.
Well, people moved to Akers Homes from Freedmans Town and other places because of, well, Houston was one of those places that had a lot of police brutality. And in order to have safety where they felt safe, they moved out. They moved out from the city. And Akers Homes was one of those places, and they actually could buy their homes and actually have some land around. And they grew farm. They had farm animals, gardens, and different things like that. But that was like the largest African American settlement in the country. That's how big it is. That's how big it was.
And we'll get to what was just south of there, because that's a different scenario. That's a municipality we're talking about.
Yes.
That's a big deal.
Yes.
So here's some photos from Akers Homes that you took. Talk about this.
This is one of the oldest churches that's in Akers Homes. Now, I know the name of the church, I just can't think of it right now. But basically, when you talk about oldest church, you talk about congregation, not necessarily the building.
True.
If you're able to find a building that's an old building, that's phenomenal. And sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. A lot of them have been torn down. But this is the oldest one. And this is just another church that's
beautiful.
there. And so what I wanted to show was the architecture of the buildings that they had there. And it's different. It's different culturally. It's not the same as anything that you might see. And it depends on who the designer was. This is actually Acreage. It has the Acreage home on it, the name on it. And so I found this building very fascinating just by the name of it. But in Akers Homes, it's really unique also because almost on every corner, there's a church.
Yeah.
Every corner. And then they have community businesses that are bedded within the community where you have access, you can walk to it. And it's just amazing. It's different from anything I've ever seen before.
Well, whenever I go to Akers Homes, I actually see horses.
Yeah.
All the time. There's always folks just riding and having a good recreation, just enjoying their horses, riding their horses out there. It makes you feel like Texas, but it also makes you feel like home. There's just something about that, and it's true, so it's wonderful. So let's see, what else do we have? That's a
multipurpose center.
Yeah.
And so
popular.
right across from the multipurpose center is Family Dollar, and that's new that's built there. And you bring up the thing about horses. One day I was out there, it was raining, and there were some people that came up. They had their horses parked out there, and it was inside the store shopping.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm like, wow. And then they come out and they come down the street and they're just going at it. And there's cars everywhere and people on their horses. So it's quite unique. Any day and time you'll see somebody on their horse.
Now I mentioned earlier Independence Heights. I think it's important to note that this was what major milestone did they have or marker they had? It was a big deal at Independence Heights. So talk about this.
Actually, this is the first municipality that actually was their own city. And I don't think there was anyone else, any of the other settlements did
First
that.
one in Texas, you're right.
Yes, and so one of the things is that I guess with the Great Depression and money matters, they got in tax trouble, and then they voted to actually to get rid of.
They needed the city of Houston's help, for infrastructure. And this happens a lot. It happened with the Heights back in 1918 when the Heights was annexed by the city of Houston. It was the Heights residents' choice to be annexed, and it happens a lot. So these separate municipalities will kind of start out that way, and then all of a sudden they realize their city is growing and they need better infrastructure, so they end up welcoming annexation. Unlike places like King, where other folks, obviously some people fight it. But it really is part of Houston's history, part of Texas history, and then part of African American history, Independence Heights. And there's a lot of a new buzz that's happening in the area. We're kind of seeing a little bit of that, right? Just a little bit, because it is in jeopardy of being wiped off the map here, kind of, right?
Yes, it is. Actually, this is one of the main strips, one of the main streets that this sign is actually off of. And there's like 4 or 5 churches that are on the strip. I think it's Main Street. And they're trying to get it to come back to where it's Black Wall Street, in Texas or whatever. But I think it's sad that so much of it is gone.
Yeah.
Like even some of the houses that were good historical houses have been torn down. And the problem is that we don't understand the value of the culture or the history, and we just let it go. you might get pennies for it, somebody else might get thousands and thousands of dollars for it, just by taking it and revamping it. So a lot of this particular property is actually gone. Still have some historical places there, some nice places, but most of it is.
Yeah, I mean, you've got houses in the area that are probably from like the 1940s, maybe early 30s, but that's about it. There's nothing there from 1905 that I know of.
I haven't seen
Yeah, it's all just been, and it makes sense. A lot of those are wooden structures, and they will deteriorate over time. But I love the fact that they celebrated their centennial anniversary by putting this marker up here. Obviously, the community felt like it was important to be able to acknowledge the past. And you can drive right through. I mean, we're talking about basically north of Loop 610 on Yale Street, kind of the Yale area, just north of that new Whole Foods, for example, has a mural on the side of it, which is, it's nice to be able to have something to say that this is where this community used to be. And I hope to see more art and more of it documented. So,
well, can I just say something about that?
Sure.
My thing about it is, we have these historical areas, and it's fine to have art.
Yeah.
But I don't want our historical areas to become a representation of just art, because it's much more than that. Art is not sustainable, not when it's on the side of a building, because with weather and just the beat from the weather, it disappears, it fades away. So you want something that's going to be there. And the other thing about it is, we talk about the old houses and different things like that. It just depends on, you have a developer come in, they have a plan, and they decide that I want to do a master community, whatever it is. This is the same thing that happened back during those times, that someone had a plan. Because if you look at the houses, the way the houses are designed, I don't care what part of the city you go in. Depending on where it is, they're going to be designed pretty much the same. Okay, so it's the same thing that's going on now. You have somebody that has a plan, I want to implement my vision, and that's what they do, they implement their vision. However, there's certain types of houses that have been built either for rent or for whatever it is, that's maybe not necessarily built by that person. And with that, I personally feel that our ancestors did not intend for us to live in those type of situations. So in some situations, depending on what it is.
And this is an older structure at the church. So talk about this structure here.
This is an old church they took and turned into an apartment building.
What you were talking about earlier, yeah.
Yeah, so I took this picture when they was first working on it. And so now it looks pretty different. It still looks, the outside still looks the same, but it's an apartment complex now. And everything's inside. So it's quite fascinating. This is a church just right around the corner from there. And you see where the house is? See how close the house is to that? It's right on the corner of it. So access is everything as far as in African American communities. You could walk to church. Doesn't matter what type of church, but you had access and could walk. And this is one of the oldest schools that's there, elementary schools that's there in the area. And this is unique. This is unique about African American communities. See, this is a funeral home that's on the corner.
Yeah.
And then you see the church right next to it. Certain places you go, you still see that.
Oh yeah.
It used to be
Fifth Ward. You see
yes,
a lot of Fifth
everywhere.
Ward. And Pruitt's is actually Fifth Ward too.
Yes, yeah. So it is something that you would find in African American culture inside. But another thing is, used to be that churches would have cemeteries next to them.
Yes.
However, in Houston, we had X number of cemeteries, and then they said, oh no, you can't bury your dead here, you're gonna have to go out. A lot of people are buried in Paradise Cemetery, which is out at Akers Homes, or some other places. So there's a lot of historical cemeteries, but they didn't allow cemeteries in this particular location in Independence Heights. And this is someone's business, which is the cake shop. Cake shop is actually in the back of someone's home.
It's tiny.
Yeah, but it's like, they're very well known.
That's like
very well known.
300 square feet.
Yes, but very well known, and they're still operating actually.
I love that.
Yeah.
So that's good. You got to support local businesses, especially ones in the community. So cake shop, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is just showing you some architecture of the homes, the type of homes that's there. It's different.
Yeah.
Just a lot of different. They have some beautiful old homes there, but you just have to go into.
And they're quickly being demolished. I mean,
some of them.
Yeah, I've
but
seen
not all of them.
A lot of the townhouses are starting to come in, kind of like the Fifth Ward. They're doing the same thing. They're making their way over there. So,
And this is one of the oldest churches that's there. And I'm not sure what the name of it is now, because the name has changed several times on this particular building. But this is the location where the original church was. And that's another house, another example. And this is a historical house, and it's actually part of a historical street that's within there. There's just one street, I think it's 33rd and a half, something like that. And this is just one of the houses that's on there. Just trying to show you what some of the older houses look like.
I love it. It's freshly painted. Someone cares about the house. They're taking care of the community's been there. It looks like it must be someone who's been there for a while because they love the neighborhood. Now let's talk about a little bit of, there's a couple photos on Piney Point, at least one I want to show.
Yes. This is the church. This church is over 150 years old. And like I told you before, not necessarily maybe the building,
the congregation,
but the congregation is over 100 years old. And so when you go to Piney Point right now, Janetta is the main street that's right there where this is. And then you have Westheimer and West Park. I think it's between Westheimer and West Park, that part of it. They still have some things that's named Piney Point, but then you have Piney Point Village, which is on the other side. So African Americans are where you say Piney Point, where they were, but Piney Point Village is a very affluent community. There's probably very few African Americans there, if any. But just the distinction, it has the name, but this is the area where African Americans lived at. And this is one of the oldest structures that's there. I haven't really seen a whole bunch of anything else. Most of the houses it's already transformed to something else. A lot of businesses in the areas.
Commercial, a lot of industrial parks too.
Yes.
Yeah, Janetta was a small settlement. So Janetta also had a stop on the railroad that ran east to west over there. St. Lorenzo's Pass, which is no longer there. It's the one that ran along West Park that we're going to learn about next week with Douglas Weisskopf. So how about that?
Yes.
And Fifth Ward, you got to talk about Fifth Ward. You know, the nickel. Let's talk about Fifth Ward. Here we are talking about Fifth Ward with Priscilla T Graham. So let's talk about it.
This is Mount Vernon. This is one of the oldest churches there, and actually, right in the back of Mount Vernon is a actual funeral home. That is it right there. It's actually a funeral home. Remember, I was telling you that there are patterns of.
And the building's this one looks like the 1930s, maybe the late 20s, but there it is right there. There you go.
Yeah, I never really, when I first looked at it, I never really saw that. It was later that I actually saw that it was together like that, because I really didn't know what the building was. And this is one of the churches there. I think this church, I don't know if this church is still open, but it's right off the freeway. It's really hard to get to in order to actually.
Well, it's really sad because if you look at the history of Fifth Ward was actually bisected by two freeways. You have I-10 that goes east to west that cuts the lower portion of Fifth Ward, the bottom, and then you have the
59.
The western side that was cut by 59. So it's just really horrible because the community was greatly impacted by that, and that's a thing that we see a lot when we talk about African American history. We look at the freeways impacting these communities in a big way. We look at Fourth Ward, for example, and you're going to talk about your newest book.
Yes.
Very, very special for that. Okay, let's keep going.
This is one of the churches that's there, one of the older churches that's there also. So just showing you the architecture. That's what I really like the most is architecture. And this is actually a church that's right next to St. Elizabeth.
Yes.
And St. Elizabeth is being renovated. They're going to do something with it, so I'm glad to see that.
Yeah, it'll be like housing, I believe. Fifth Ward CRC is working on that. And St. Elizabeth, just so we think of Riverside Hospital as one of the main hospitals in Third Ward. It was for the African American community, but St. Elizabeth's Hospital was another one that was very important too for the Fifth Ward area. And so you can check it out there. So we're excited the Fifth Ward CRC is doing new stuff with it. I like this photo. Talk about it, and I'll tell you why in a second. I like it so much because you'll see this all throughout Fifth Ward.
Yes.
Pride.
So this is Lyons Avenue, and at the bus stops they have historical photos inside the bus stops. So you're sitting there inside the bus stop and you're getting an education. You're doing a historical education with that. And you get to see the people that live there. These are real live living people that are in there. I thought it was just fascinating.
You're right. Like Barbara Jordan, for example, her likeness is there and her legacy, and it's actually text. There's information there, which is perfect because you can read it while you're waiting for the bus. You can be educated about the neighborhood and the area, and on Lyons Avenue, like you mentioned earlier, that main thoroughfare. But I love that this photo was included in your slideshow because we do get to learn about history as it's all around us.
And this was. This is another church. I can't remember why I took the picture of this church, but this was an older church. And I looked for this church a long time before I found this church. But like I said, I can't remember the significance of the reason why I was looking for it, but look at the architecture of it.
But
It's
I love
totally
what
different.
I love what you do, Priscilla, because what you're really doing is you're capturing a documentation of it, because we don't know how long this church may be around. Something might happen, and that's important. So that's really what her books are all about. Is you're going to get a photo and you're going to get information, some basic information, and then if somebody really wants to go explore more about it, well, they can do that as well.
Yes.
But you're providing them with that foundation, with that seed.
Yes.
I think that's very, very valuable. So now this is another part of the Fifth Ward, and it's kind of a separate part. The folks that live in this side of Fifth Ward are really proud of their what heritage?
These are Creoles. They're from Louisiana. And so this is what they call French Town.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just over there not too long ago looking to see what was still the same. A lot of it is still the same. A lot of it looked like they're working on it, like they're upgrading some things and people working on their homes and different things like that. So I was happy to see that. I was happy to see some changes. But this is French Town. Now there's a whole lot of Fifth Ward.
Yeah.
And the one thing about it is, even when you go across Lyons on the other side of what was over there, a lot of buildings, a lot of businesses and different things.
The Roxy
like that.
Theater, all
Yes,
these theaters were out
yes.
there, yeah.
And so you get to see all those things. And actually the theaters, you can see what they look like. The Lux Theater is one that they actually redid in Fifth Ward. It's on Lyons Avenue. And that's very interesting. But right behind the theater are these houses. And so they all look alike.
Yeah.
They're all side by side, like row houses.
Yeah,
Side by
white
side.
little houses, very common.
Yes, and so those to me are rent houses. Those are houses that were invented or somebody made for rent houses. Those are not normally houses that someone will build for themselves. They're different. That's why I have a different opinion about some things.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that if it was a house that someone built for themselves, and it was that way, possibility if they have a historical link to their path here.
Yeah.
But if it's like a rent house or something that someone else made for you, it has the minimum accommodations.
Sure, yeah.
I can't I just don't see it the same way in a historical context, because all you're doing is showing something that there's no progress
To
with
get
that.
by.
There's no progress with that.
Yeah.
I'm from Thomasville, Georgia, and being from Thomasville, Georgia, we have plantations. And so when you go onto the plantations and you see the places where slaves or those houses that they had, it reminds me of the same thing. And so I just don't think I need to be fighting to save that. That's all.
Sure.
That's all I'm saying
Okay.
about that. And that's my personal opinion. That's not anybody else's opinion. If you have money, you want to save that, you can do that. But that's not my opinion about it. I don't think that's the way our ancestors meant for us to live. I believe that they meant for us to survive in order to do better than what they did. And a lot of times when you see people trapped in those situations, they haven't lived up to the expectations of our ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it.
This is a famous church.
Yes, it is.
There you go.
Look
Check
at
it.
how it's made, though. Look at the peak on it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And that was the church that's right next to St. Elizabeth.
This is
Yeah.
John Chase is the architect
Yes.
For the church, and he's a very famous African-American architect and a very famous architect in general. But he was the first graduating architect from the University of Texas School, and there's a great exhibit. There was a great exhibit. It's no longer there, of course, at the Gregory Lincoln School, which is part of the Houston Public Library system. And I think that you've got close connection with the folks over there, because they really appreciate what you're doing as well. And talk a little bit about not too far from there is, because when I went to your book signing, you work closely with the museum that's there as well. Talk a little bit about the museum space that's there and kind of the work they're doing in Fourth Ward Freedmans Town.
Yates. Okay.
Yes.
We have Yates Museum that's there. Rutherford Yates is the house that they've actually restored. Actually, the original material that's in the house is 80%. And so it's been restored 100%. And that's the museum. It's a print museum. Rutherford Yates, Jack Yates' son, is the one who owned that house. And his daughter, her name is McCullough. She worked with Miss Catherine Roberts in order to help save the house. And so with that, I believe that Catherine got inspired in order to save all the historical houses around it, because you have the J. Vance Lewis house. You also have the Ned Pullum house. down the street farther across from the Gregory School Library, there is the Nixon House. And so those houses have more protection on them than some that you would just see with the historical sign on it. But she's turned them into museums. Right now, the Nixon House and the J. Vance Lewis House are being restored right as we speak right now. They're working on them. And so hopefully those homes will be open soon. And she also has a barber college, which is just a little house. It's right next to the Nixon House, but it used to be a barber shop. That's what was in there. So they're doing a lot of great work down there. So there's a lot going on in Freedmans Town. You'll see some stuff that's not traditional, but there's a lot going on down there. Who can pass up that beautiful view that's from that location to Freedman, to downtown? Who can pass up the view? Actually, I can see almost everything, even the lower buildings here. If you stand in the streets where you saw that picture earlier, you can see straight through, depending on what street you're on. So it's pretty fascinating what's down there.
But that's also been one of the reasons why it's so developed. You got people coming in there because they want that view, and and it's really sad because we're losing the character of Fourth Ward Freedman's Town. We got to save it, and I think that the great work that y'all are doing with the nonprofit over there, you'll see some houses, by the way, that are raised and fenced off because they're in jeopardy of being falling apart. So I love what they're doing there about trying to keep them now. We may not have the money to fix them now, but at least we can save them and preserve them so that when that time does come, they can do that. So, when you get a chance, the weather's nice now, go walk around Freedmans Town and really learn about the history. You can do that on your own, and you can do it by getting one of Priscilla T Graham's books, because those books will teach you about history as you're walking throughout. So I'm going to wrap up Fifth Ward real quick. This, of course, is the Club Matinee. It was on Lyons Avenue. It's no longer there, but there's KCOH Radio, of course, 1430 a.m., and there's a fun photo of just young people really here in Houston just kind of enjoying, the Club Matinee. Before we say goodbye to Priscilla, we want to make sure that we talk about your books real quick. So let's talk about the newest one you have out, Camp Logan. I want you to show the camera this real quick because they need to see what's going on with this brand new book you have. This is the book time that I went to. Talk about that one real quick.
Okay, so this is Camp Logan. This is about the 1917 Houston riot mutiny here in Houston, where we had 156 soldiers march on the city of Houston because of police brutality. That's the whole thing. 1917 police brutality parallels to what's going on right now in 2020. The reason that I wrote this particular book is because I wanted to humanize the people that were part of that. If we could find any information, a picture, whatever, because we always talk about, there was 13 soldiers hanged. There were X number of soldiers that did whatever. And then I was able to find pictures of them. And so I wanted to share that with them. Even if I found the bio of them or whatever information I could find on them, I put it inside the book. Okay? And so there's a movie out that's called 24. This is what I have a problem with. There's a movie out called 24. Sergeant Henry, his name is Sergeant Vidal Henry. He was what they call the leader of the mutiny. He led the soldiers out. He's buried at College Park Cemetery. And there's a soldier, Private Watson is also buried there. And it took 100 years before headstones were put on their unmarked graves. But in the movie 24, they still portray Sergeant Henry as killing himself. And that's what I have a problem with. The movie is great. However, you have to go back to the original information, which is the inquest. The first time that they found his body was at the inquest. And the inquest tells you that a bayonet or something was stabbed in his chest and pulled across. And his head was bashed in with something. And there were soldiers that found him from the Illinois National Guard. And so we had people that brag, in part of the information it tells you that people bragged about that. So he didn't kill himself. They ruled it as a homicide. Westheimer was the one who picked him up. Westheimer used to be, and we had the road Westheimer, you heard of that, right? So Westheimer actually was the coroner. Westheimer was the coroner that picked him up. And guess what? The place where Westheimer was located is right downtown. It's amazing that building is still there. It's a restaurant, I think, now. think it was a restaurant in the place that was the place where they took dead bodies. That's interesting, but people don't know that. So it's important for you to know the history of the property, okay? Very important. But these guys have a headstone 100 years later. Buffalo Soldiers Museum helped get them a headstone 100 years later. They had a ceremony during that time when they had the 100-year ceremony. But they laid in those unmarked graves for 100 years before a headstone was placed on them. If you go to San Antonio, Texas, there's 17 of the 19 soldiers' bodies that were hung that's in that cemetery. Even in death, they integrated the cemetery, the National Cemetery. Can you imagine that? So it's pretty fascinating. And with that, with the San Antonio trip, I had the opportunity to go to Gift Chapel, where they actually was prosecuted, where they actually had the trial. They had 63 soldiers, the largest trial in history.
Nation, yeah.
Yes. And I went in there. And you can still see the places where it's segregated off.
Wow.
And we went to Hayman's Grove.
Yes.
We went to the place where they actually were originally buried off of the creek. So that was phenomenal that I had a chance to go on the base and do that. But I just really wanted to know the names of the people that they were talking about that was engaged.
You know, and today's a very important day, of course.
Yes.
It is Veterans Day. We reflect and we look back at the individuals that gave their life, all individuals that gave their life, and we often overlook those stories. You were also a veteran too, so we appreciate you spending this special day with us here today on a day we should be appreciating you, remembering all of our veterans. So thank you, Priscilla T Graham, for your service to our country, and we appreciate that. And thank you so much for doing this, which she's doing right here. Look at this once again, zoom into all this, because documenting the history of Houston and Harris County and Texas African American history all throughout with 27 plus books. Where can they go to find more information about you? It's really easy.
PriscillasTGraham.com.
There you go.
Real easy.
PriscillaTGraham.com. It is all right there. And talk about your newest book, because you want to do this on our show today. This is exciting, guys. This hasn't even been out yet, and you're now going to give us a sneak peek of this gem.
Okay, this book is my newest book, which will be released on January the 6th, 2021. This is the Bagley Street YMCA. And actually, at the facility we're at right now, this is the Pilgrim Building, which used to be right across the street from here. So this is phenomenal. But this is the Bagley YMCA, which was part of the Colored YMCA in Houston that was started, that most people don't know any information about. So I worked for the YMCA for 18 and a half years. I opened the first YMCA in the country to be named after a professional sports team, which is the Houston Texans YMCA. And so that's how I got really rooted in passion as far as the YMCA. And here again, I wanted to know the name. I wanted to know the people that you always talk about, because they always told us up until 1931, it was independent Y. And I was like, wow, so what's before that? Nobody could ever tell me. So I started looking for myself.
And like all of your books, great detail information in there. I mean, it's still a work in progress though. But I mean, I get to look at it earlier. It was really neat. So, but here it is, guys. So just stay tuned to Priscilla T Graham, because she's doing great things. Professional photographer out there documenting the history. I mean, I've been to so many events. Again, this is going to be out real soon. This is a draft copy, but lots of great photos that you're only going to learn about African American history with Priscilla T Graham's books and what she does at PriscillaTGraham.com. Now, we got 5 questions to ask the audience based on what they heard with your lecture today. So, what are those 5 questions going to be? Question number 1.
Who was Jack Yates?
Okay. So, what was the profession of Jack Yates? How about that? Okay. His most famous, most well-known profession, there you go. What was Jack Yates' profession? Are people chiming in? And you're supposed to chime in right now, by the way. Chime in and ask some questions and let us know the answer, because we asked a question a second ago. What was Jack Yates' profession? People are chiming in now. Let's see. You got a lot of friends, by the way, a lot of fans. Judy, Teeny, let's see who else is here. Patricia's here.
Awesome.
Stacy Miller, Chandra, Christy Knott.
Hey.
All these folks. Hey, my buddy Ray Hand Camper's on the phone too. There you go. Look at this. Rebecca too. Lots of fun folks. So thank you all for tuning in. So who's got the answer? Let's see. I'll be chiming in. Okay, one person chimed in. Keep going, guys. Keep it going. Okay, second question.
What is the soldier's name that's buried out in College Park that was part of the 1917 Mutiny?
There you go. That's a good question, because you spent some time talking about kind of a, he wasn't really treated well in that scenario. So I love the fact. So what is the name? Say it again. The question again. What is the name of the?
What is the name of the soldiers that's buried in College Park Cemetery that was part of the 1917 mutiny?
Yeah, the main one. We give one
Yes.
name. Yes.
Yes, the sergeant's name.
The sergeant's name. Okay. There you go. Doesn't she have a famous great niece here in Houston? In their connection to a local professor? Okay.
Listen.
Okay, never mind.
I
Okay,
know
there you go.
exactly what you're
Name
talking
earlier. Anybody chiming in? One person's chiming in. Okay. Let's keep chiming in, guys, with your questions. Okay. By the way, make sure that you hit the like button when it comes to the lecture today. Make sure you hit that like button. Let us know that you like what you're hearing today, so we can bring you more talks like this. Okay. Our third question.
What is the name of the settlement that's in Fifth Ward that was settled by people from Louisiana?
There you go. That is a good question. Priscilla T Graham talked about this earlier. Say the question again.
What is the name of the settlement that was settled by people from Louisiana?
Yeah, and you talked about it. There's a marker there too.
Yes.
So it was on the talk earlier. So if you tuned in last minute or late, you might have missed it. But there you go. Keep chiming in, guys. Who's chiming in? Okay, one person's chiming in. Okay, we'll see if you got it right. Okay, our fourth question.
Okay, let me see if I said this. What is the name of the theater in Fifth Ward that I said that was on Lyons Avenue
Yes.
that was renovated?
Okay. Priscilla T. Graham mentioned the name of the theater that was recently renovated on Lyons Avenue. A very famous theater. We're lucky to have it. It's one of the only ones left. So there you go. Okay, what's the name of the theater? Who's chiming in? Folks are doing it. They're doing it right now. All right. Okay, our fifth and final question.
Wow, okay. What did I say about the brick streets? What does the brick streets have in common with the brick streets? What does the brick streets have in common in Freedmans Town with the brick streets that I told you about in my hometown, Thomasville, Georgia?
Okay, what's the connection? Where do those two and lots of brick streets around the nation have that something in common? What is that they have in common? Okay, and again, Priscilla T. Graham mentioned it earlier, so that's the question. What do they have in common? The brick streets in 4th Ward, Freedmans Town, and the ones in our own town in Georgia. Okay, so those are our 5 questions. We'll have the answer for you next week. Again, if you saw the video, you probably have the answer yourself. Who's chiming in? Good stuff. People are chiming in. They're getting those answers right. We'll see if they got them right next week. Well, lastly, thank you again to Priscilla T. Graham for joining us. We do appreciate your time here once again, sharing her knowledge with you. Go out and get her books, guys, because you're supporting a local author and a photographer and an historian, and you're going to get this information only in those books. So thank you again for your time. We appreciate it. Always, guys, thank you to you for tuning in. Big thank you to you, and make sure you tune in next week, our very last show, season finale, until we come back in late January. Okay, so thank you again to Alana, to Isaac Saravia, to Kian, to Harrison Funches, to Adrian Rivera, and of course, always thank you to Allison Bell, our Executive Director, and Minette Basel, our Board Chairman. Okay, and good night. Well, take care, guys. We'll see you then. Thanks for joining us.